Welcome to a first run impression review of the Nike Invincible 3.
I'm in debt to no one but the one who took my sins. I do it for real, there's no reason to pretend. If I do it once, I do it again. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso.
So Nike have released the Invincible 3, hugely popular shoe, the easy / recovery run shoe, which for me personally, I've run thousands of miles in versions 1 and versions 2. They've upgraded it to a version 3, which has been released just last week. I got a pair sent to me by Pro Direct Running, so these are my first thoughts on the shoe, having run a 5-mile run with some strides and also a long run of just under 15 miles over the weekend. So what are the key changes in this version of the shoe? Nike have added a little bit of stack height into the rear and the forefoot. Still a 9mm drop, just a little bit more foam, so it's a bit more of that same max cushion shoe that you get from the Invincible 2, and it also fits in that line of all max cushioned easy day sort of recovery day shoe. So it's slightly more cushioning in the forefoot and heel. What I notice is there's more rubber on the outside of the shoe. They've also covered up some of that exposed ZoomX that you were getting on the outside of the Invincible 2. They've also added a little bit extra in terms of the rubber that's on the outside of the shoe. They just feel a bit more traction. And also it does have an effect on the sound that the shoe actually makes. When you have more rubber on the shoe, you do tend to get a little bit more slap, which is again something that does happen a lot on these shoes. I'm not a really loud runner, soft on my feet, I'd like to say, but I noticed these straight away that they were making more of a slappy sound compared to previous version. A lot more stiffer. They don't bend as much. Like I'm really putting a lot of force into that to try and bend it. Whereas on version 2, when I try to bend it, I can literally just bend it without as much force. On the heel canner, you can see the outside of this little ring, which is basically just going straight through to the midsole. That adds a little bit more stiffness. And I just feel like these are a lot more structured compared to the version 2. So if you felt like the version 2 was a little bit squishy, a little bit wobbly through the midsole, these are not so much. These have a lot more structure, a little bit more stability. They're wider on the forefoot. So Nike has widened the forefoot and also the heel just to have a little bit more structure and landing placement and just a bit more solid when you touch the ground. Still pretty soft. The ZoomX is pretty soft, very squishy. It doesn't feel as bouncy as version 2. The big changes for me are in the upper. So the upper is now more of a structured Flyknit. So that's the sound. It's quite wiry in terms of the feeling. It's got like a shiny gloss sort of effect on there, and it's just got more of a structured feel. There is definitely a wrap in the midfoot cage, and I'll go on to this a little bit later about how it affected my run, which is probably not a good thing in my opinion. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more changes. The heel counter is a little bit more structured. It's definitely got more sort of life in it. It's not as wobbly and sort of as soft as the version 2. The laces are a little bit longer, a bit more shoelace laces. And again, you can still tie these up and you get 2 holes for the runner's knots. The tongue is quite long, if I'm honest. Quite long, sits quite high up on the top of your foot, so it's okay, it's good. It doesn't really have too much of an issue, but it's quite padded, so it does absorb some of the issues of the laces if you have to cinch down quite tightly. It's not a racing day shoe, it's more of an everyday daily trainer, max cushioned, and it definitely fits within that range. So I think there's some compromises that have been made in terms of looking for stability and looking for structure, and that's been compromised with change in the upper. It's essentially trying to fix one problem, and I think it's creating more problems for me personally as someone who really enjoyed the version 2. And in terms of sizing, it's obviously a road shoe. It is a little bit heavier than the version 2. I'm not sure why they keep doing this, but that probably accounts for the extra stability in the heel that they've added, the extra material in the ZoomX, the heel and the forefoot, and they probably shaved a little bit from the material on the upper. They've taken away some of the bulk, but again, it has risen in weight. Version 1 was a baseline, version 2 increased in weight, version 3 is increased in weight. So it's trending in the wrong direction in my total opinion. So moving on, what's the fit actually like of this particular shoe? So for me, when I first tried them on, I found as if like my heel was slipping a lot in the shoe. I've never really had too much of a problem with version 1 and version 2, but I just felt like I had to keep tightening the shoe once or twice. Having run first 5 miles, I tightened them quite tight for some strides. which was fine. I don't really use the runners not as much, just because sometimes I can get pain on the top of my foot, so I'm always wary about doing them too tight, just to try and guard off that. There is that issue that you do slip in the back of the shoe. It just feels like it just overhangs a little bit. Whilst trying to provide a little bit more structure and stability, I feel as if that is slightly not as great, if I'm honest with you, not as great. I never really had this problem in version 2. So that's the first thing. They fit true to size more than anything, and what I did notice on the fit was, having run the long run yesterday of 14, just under 15 miles, because I tightened them so tight, I found that the midfoot, this wiring cage, so as you can see, it's got that sort of waxy sort of material. It dug in to the sides of both my feet. I wear cushioned socks, so it's never an issue with what I wear in terms of socks wise. And it basically has cut the side of my feet on the instep on both sides, caused blisters on both, which is a first for me. Like, I never really had blisters with the Invincible, so that was a huge negative experience. I got it from mile 4 to 5 onwards, and then ran another 10 miles with them. So as soon as I knew I'd taken my shoe off, I was like, yeah, this is definitely damage control. That wasn't too great. Because you're trying to cover for the fact that your heel is slipping, you're ending up having to tighten the shoe a hell of a lot more, and this is now digging in because of the structure that they've added into this material and into this Flyknit. I actually didn't mind the softness of this material. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's quite nice. The softness is gone, and as a result you get something a little bit more structured, which I don't really have a wide foot. I've probably got somewhere in the average, maybe a little bit on the wide side, and as a result it's just digging in and it's cut into the sides of my feet, and that wasn't great. Let's move into the ride. I feel as if they are quite structured. They're definitely more solid, more stable. Not as bouncy as the first version. I think you have that familiar feeling of the shoe. It keeps your turnover nice and high, and also it does feel quite enjoyable to running, aside from the issues of the midfoot, which for me, it'll be a while until I go back and try these again. At the present moment, version 3 doesn't do anything for me that I felt version 2 doesn't do. So an upgrade if you felt as if version 2 was too wobbly and too squishy for you. If you're happy with version 1 and 2, I don't feel there's a great need at all in getting version 3 at all. I got a blue pair of these at the Nike outlet store for £60. So as a verdict for me personally, if you're looking to get the shoe or retry the shoe, having had a bad experience in 1 and 2 because it was too soft or too squishy, or the fact that your foot moved around too much, these might help that. And the fact that it just really hugs the middle of your foot. As a result, the more tighter you pull the shoe, the option is that you could get compression, could get cutting in feeling. You might get the same blister sort of effect that maybe I suffered. It might be a one-off. It could have been the socks. I don't know, but it did happen. It did occur, and it was something that was present on both feet. So it was something that was continuous on both shoes. I even tried to move the insole out of the shoe and to the side, just in case that was rubbing, but it was just a case that it was digging in quite tightly. And if you wear them a slightly loose or not so tight fit, you're going to end up getting a bit of a heel slippage as well. So for me personally, the early verdict is at £170, you're better off getting a cheaper version and stocking up on the version 2 if you had no issues in these. If you enjoyed the ride, enjoyed how they felt, stick with version 2. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So thank you for watching once again, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video.